Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. Coming up.
Instead of looking at things that are important, like we talked about before, they fanny about around the edges with things like this. They don't serve any purpose, but they seem to feel that every summer they've got to introduce something new to be seen to doing their job.
We were in the bar and there was a few of the Man City boys in. One was Joey Barton and Richard Dunne. A few Everton fans that were there were having too much to drink. Young boy, maybe 14 or 15, said some words to Joey and Joey didn't like it, so Joey just decided to whack him, and that's when it all kicked off.
Crouchy, I believe, was standing on a cliff. He could see jellyfish just about in the water below, so he does it and he landed in the jet and gets stung to ribbons. The only way to soothe a jellyfish sting, as we know, is to pee on it. Hello and welcome to Whistleblowers. I'm Gordon Smart, joined as ever by the one and only Mark Clattenburg. And this week, without his party hat, without his kid's birthday party fez, it is Ian Ladyman. Hello, Ian.
You better explain that.
Regular listeners will know, if you watch on YouTube, Ian last week had the misfortune of a light behind him that looked like he was wearing a little party hat from a kid's party.
Really, Tommy Cooper.
A little Tommy Cooper hat. But I think it's giving you something else, the little party.
A little Tommy Cooper and only half as funny.
You should. I think wearing a party hat in this podcast would give it a whole new dimension.
Well, we may have to resort to that at some stage, maybe not quite yet.
Mark Clattenburg's here as well. I should say, Mark, that there's been some conversation about the Dulux colour chart of your wonderful hue, like this skin colour you have. It's a healthy man in front of me. So it comes from Dan80_G. Just trips off the tongue, his name. But he says, get a grip, you overly sensitive permatan diva. So the question we have for you, Mark, to start the podcast, is it real, that tan, or is it fake?
It's got to be real from where I live. So I live in Spain most of my life now.
Durham.
Durham, Spain. Yeah, so I don't live in the northeast anymore. If I'd lived in the northeast, then you could say it was out of a bottle, but it's certainly not out of a bottle. It's a golfer's tan, because you haven't really seen where the golfer's tan ends, like the shorts, the white up and the arms. So no, it's a Spanish tan.
Don't you always think that when you see the American golfers on the 18th green and they doff the cap to shake hands and to reveal the kind of ivory, that's right, isn't it? Ivory white foreheads, and just think, you know what? I'm not sure that all the money that you earn, all the trophies that you've got are worth looking like that. Looking at that once you take your hat off.
Ian Ladyman's the opposite. When Ian takes his hoodie off, he's actually tanned underneath. It's just his face and his hands are white. He gets a tan off a Kindle, this man.
That's
right. Right. Tell you what film, I was watching a film yesterday called The Hangover, and it just brought us back when he was stuck on the roof and he'd been suntanned for 2 days and he had to go and get married, and I'm thinking, do I really look like that?
Yeah,
you obviously don't wear a cap playing golf, do you?
No.
Too vain for that.
Yeah. I'm always standing around because I'm waiting for other people, because I'm that good. I'm waiting for them to play the shots. You see, and that's how I get me tan.
You're that good and that selfish, you can't be asked to help them look for their ball, so you're always just standing around.
Correct.
It's not a golf podcast, but there are questions to be asked about a man whose handicap is only 12 when he plays 7 times a week. That shows a real lack of natural talent to me.
About the golf, by the way, just quickly about the golf. So the Scottish Scheffler wins the Open, blah, blah, blah. Everyone gets excited about his kid. Yeah. His 2-year-old coming onto the 18th green. Did you notice? I didn't notice it till the next day, and I saw a photograph. It was actually on the back page of the print edition of the Daily Mail of Scheffler and the kid. The kid's head to toe in Nike. The kid's head to toe, which obviously is Scheffler's sponsor. So even in these moments of what we think are kind of pure sporting drama, pure sporting emotion, the sponsor's got to be front and central.
Ian would have had him in a Wigan Warriors top.
Imagine that. Could have worn mine.
It would have fitted him. Could have worn your little party fez as well.
I lost at the weekend, by the way.
I noticed.
The line. I watched. Me and my dad watched that on the telly. Not good.
You would have a football shirt from Manchester as well, wouldn't he?
Well, that's where I live.
Yeah.
Keep that mystery alive, Mr. Clattenburg. We're at that interesting stage, aren't we, of pre-season, right? And it is in full swing now, because we've seen the pictures of tanned players like Mark Clattenburg doing their pre-season fitness stuff. But gone are the days, aren't they, of the tours, which would be a warm-up. It's a proper travelling circus now, isn't it, Ian? You know, you've been on some of these trips. So we're talking about US, you know, there's always an LA trip. Chelsea used to do that, I know. Asia trips, there's big crowd sponsors, headlines to come from it. But to cover it as a journalist, is it just a big piss up?
So they've all gone out. I will answer your question. So they've all gone out there. They've all gone out there, haven't they? So now this is a time that they all go. So I think Liverpool have just got to Hong Kong. Man United have just got to Chicago. For example, as you rightly say, a lot of them are going to America this time. America has become the destination of choice. When I was starting out 25 years ago with Manchester United, it was usually Asia. Asia was the big frontier to be conquered. That's where the money was. That's where the fanaticism was. So I did lots of tours to China and Singapore and Malaysia and Vietnam and Hong Kong, places like that. Now I'll get to your question. Are they a big piss up? There was certainly a lot of that. Yeah, I was 30 when I started. There was certainly a lot of that. Time differences could help with that, especially in the old days of when we were just dealing with newspaper deadlines and not kind of digital online deadlines. Time differences could really help with that. Let me get this the right way round. I think in America, the office couldn't really get you at night. Is that right? One of them, anyway, couldn't get you at night, so you were free. And as time went on, you get older, the demands of the job changed. Digital journalism became so important, so you're filing more. Time differences don't matter because the website never sleeps. That kind of changed the dynamic a little bit. But I won't say for a minute that they weren't fun. Because they were, and I look back at them now because I don't do them anymore. I've got a slightly different job. I've not done one for about 10 years, and I look back now actually. And some of the ones I did when I was a bit older, some of the American ones with Manchester City, with United, I really really enjoyed actually. And it shows how life changes. The last one I did, which was I think Louis van Gaal's tour of America, I decided that on that trip I was going to run more miles than drinks I'd drunk, something like that, and that was how I played it off. So if I hadn't done my 5 miles in the morning, I could only have kind of four beers at night, and that was the way that I did it. Slightly different for the players, right, these days.
So thinking back to those trips as well, though, because the players can often, and I know it's meant to be about fitness and it's meant to be about team building and all that, but you know, I was thinking back to the stuff that we covered in the paper. And I remember, I think it was a Leicester one in the Neil Lennon, Robbie Savage era that ended up on the front and back. Stan Collymore might have been there as well. But, you know, quite often those pre-season tours, is it different now is what I'm asking you, Ian?
Yeah, the incident you referred to was, I think it was an incident that I think it was at La Manga Golf Resort, and I think it just involved too much beer and maybe a fire extinguisher was involved. It was one of those, I think. Yeah, it has changed. It absolutely has changed. These tours actually, without wishing to get the little violins out, they're quite arduous for the players because the travelling is pretty relentless. They'll fly to, you know, I remember did on David Moyes' first tour with United was started in Thailand, went to Sydney for a week, then went to 2 destinations in Japan, then went somewhere else on the way home.
Because they were sponsored by Chang Beer, do you remember that?
Yeah.
I think there were some pretty mischievous trips that I heard about with Walter Smith back then.
So the players, there's a lot of commercial stuff they do out there. Yeah. They really do get worked. Yeah. The football isn't the hard stuff out there. It's the commercial stuff they do. The new strip. Signing sessions, visiting commercial partners, etc. They get dragged around, the players, and they get bored because if they're in a place like, especially if they're in the Far East, they can't go out because they get the hotel will be. If you're in Beijing with Man United or Liverpool or Chelsea or Arsenal, the hotel's surrounded by hysterical fans. You're not going out, so you're in your room a lot. PlayStations, blah blah blah. So the opportunity for mischief is limited. I won't say for 1 minute they don't find it, because I know for a fact that they do, because we all know that if you can't, if you can't get out to the world, you can sometimes bring the world to you. We know how that can sometimes work. So I'm not saying they don't get up to anything, but it is very different. There's a means to the end on these pre-season tours. The coaches hate them, by the way. The managers hate them, obviously, because they want their players on the grass at home, getting fit. They don't want them on the grass in LA where it's 95 degrees and high humidity, etc. But they know why they do it. It's about the pounds and pence.
But you've done the Asia Trophy, Mark. Am I right?
Yeah, I did it twice in Bangkok and Hong Kong. And it was interesting because the Premier League pushed this hugely. I think the first one was in Malaysia. They had a couple in Bangkok, Hong Kong. It was a nightmare. Even like Ian said, it was all commercial. You know, they had to do it. But it wasn't just the temperatures. We had in Hong Kong, the weather. The pitches weren't great because of the rain. You know, the planning around it wasn't great. But us as refs, we loved it because it was like, you know, you still trained every day. Not to, you know, Ian's, 5 kilometers and 4 beers. I would do a marathon so I could have as many beers as I could. So we had an enjoyment where we could have, you know, the relaxing side of it, the fitness side of it, which we would do anyways, and then the games. But we tried to like enjoy it as much as everybody because you're getting the chance to go to Bangkok. What are you going to do? So I wasn't going to sit in my room. And in them days, the players didn't really sit in the room either because you saw them out, you saw them in bars, you saw them in the hotel bars, you saw them out and about. So the security it was in there, but there was some blind eyes turned because the players wanted to enjoy themselves. They wanted to let their hair down as well. And, you know, I've seen some bright sights and
come on then, right? Open those blind eyes for us then, Mark.
Well, it was my first time in the Asia Trophy, and Richard Scudamore, of course, was the chief exec and the head of the Premier League, and you know he was always on the tour. All the sponsors were on the tour, so everybody tried to be on the best behaviour. But I was in Man City's hotel, so the other teams had different hotels, and all the Premier League hierarchy were in Man City's hotel, and we were in the bar, and there was a few of the Man City boys in. One was Joey Barton and Richard Dunne and a few others. But the problem that happened was there was fans from other teams, so you had fans from Everton. And that was what caused the problem because the few Everton fans that were there were having too much to drink, and there was some words said, and it was only a young boy, I think a young boy, maybe 14 or 15, said some words to Joey, and Joey didn't like it, so Joey just decided to whack him, you know, and that's when it all kicked off. Richard Dunne got involved, and I think, you know, it was alleged that Joey bit Richard Dunne's hand and tried to get him off, and you know the father was involved. And you could just see it happening. And all we did was, I didn't care what was the fight. I didn't want to watch the fight. All I could think was, fuck, Richard Scudamore's going to come down in 5 minutes. I need to get out of this bar. So
I your cards out.
Yeah, I disappeared out while it all got sorted. I think Joey got sent home, and certain things happened where the players did get sent home. But a lot of it was, you know, to try to keep it out of the newspapers as much as possible because, you know, they didn't want what was happening on tours, you know, bad-mouthing the club, I suppose.
It didn't stay out of the newspapers. That is one of the most famous pre-season stories that there is. I was actually... So where were you again? Were you in Hong Kong?
Bangkok.
Was that Bangkok? Sorry. So I was on tour with United somewhere else in Asia. Can't remember where. And I remember getting the phone call about that incident and working on that story from, even though I wasn't with City, I was with United, working on that story in my hotel room in China or wherever I was. That was a huge story. I mean, Richard Dunne, you know, people talk about that story now. Richard Dunne would have killed Joey Barton if he'd have got his hands on him that night. I genuinely think he would have absolutely ripped him to pieces. So angry was he about what had happened. And I didn't know you were there, Mark. I actually didn't know you were actually in the bar.
I was sitting about no more than 10 metres away, and I could just see it develop. Because you know what? The problem is when people have had a few beers, and then a few of the fans had a few beers, it was just a recipe. And to be fair, I think players now they can see the signs, or they've got people around now to pull them away. It just escalated. And once the alcohol kicked in, there was no way Joey Barton was ever going to let it go, you know. I was
unwittingly in a bar on a pre-season tour with on an occasion when a story developed, but none of us knew it at the time. This was not a big overseas tour. This was a Man United trip to, I think, Scandinavia back in the day. Maybe it had been a World Cup year and they hadn't decided to do a big tour maybe. But we were in Scandinavia with United and we were in a bar or a nightclub, I guess, and the United players were there. I think we knew they were going to be there, and this was the kind of This was the 2000, 2001, 2002 group. So, the classic Man United team. And we were in this bar, and the United players were there in a VIP area. And David Beckham saw us across it wasn't particularly busy, this place, saw us, and he actually came over, because Beckham, as you know, Gordon, could be like that, David. He could be quite personable. He wasn't and he was brave enough not to give a fuck that Alex Ferguson might know that he'd come over to have a chat with the press. He just came over and literally for 5 minutes, how are you guys? How's the trip? Are you enjoying it? Or where are you going tonight? What have you been doing? Just pleasantries. That's all it was, just pleasantries. Then he went back to his group. I think we went pretty soon after that. But what we didn't know was that subsequently, a year later, when a lot of the Beckham kiss and tell stories emerged, one of them was from that night. A girl came forward from that night and claimed that she subsequently got involved with David Beckham. He denied it, obviously. But I remember reading this story on the front page of The Sun and thinking, oh my God, that's the night we were there. Yeah. What a great bunch of journalists we must have been, you know what I mean?
You'd have been sacked for that, you know?
Yeah, well, I think we kept it pretty quiet. I said that we were there. I remember thinking, blimey, we were there that night. But it's rare that you get that close to players at all these days, particularly on pre-season. But it's a good time to go with clubs, because what tends to happen is that all the rancour and ill feeling that builds up within a dressing room, and certainly in terms of some of the managers towards the media as the season goes on, it all dissipates during the summer. They all go away on a holiday, they sit on the beach, and then they come back and everybody everybody loves each other. Even Fergie used to be nice to us on pre-season tours. Well, there was one when he didn't speak to us for the whole time we were there, 2-week tour of the Far East. Fergie never spoke to us because we wrote something on the first day that upset him. It was true, but it upset him. But by and large, even Sir Alex was in a good mood on pre-season.
You remember what it was that upset him?
Yeah, we wrote a story. He'd fallen out with Roy Keane, and we wrote a story as a group. All the tabloids wrote a story that Keane would lose the captaincy, and Fergie didn't like it. And the reason he didn't like it was because it was true when it happened. We literally wrote that story on the first day of the tour, and we hauled our arses around China and Hong Kong and wherever else without the most important person in football uttering a word to us.
There was a cold front coming from the east.
There really was. There really was.
This Friday I'm going to see Oasis, right? But it takes me back to the first time round, and I remember being in the Landmark Hotel with Joey Barton, Ben Thatcher. I mean, already a bad start, isn't it? Bad combination. And Freddie Flintoff was there, because I think England were playing the Ashes. Must have been around the same sort of time.
2005 then?
It must have been. It must have been, if my dates are right. But a lot of those nights blend into one. And I'll never forget it, because Joey Barton was showing off to try and impress the Gallaghers, and he ate a Motorola Razor. Obviously not the battery that killed him, but that was his party trick. And I just remember thinking, and that must have been the summer of a pre-season, I think, around that time. Yeah. And I just thought, oh man, is that really where we're at? But the pre-season stories are brilliant from footballers when they're safe to tell. Like the Crouchy tells one, I think they must have been in La Manga or somewhere in Spain, so they could get to Ibiza for one night, and they somehow managed it. And there was an incident where Crouchy, I believe, was standing on a cliff above, waves crashing into a big pool of water, and people were egging him on to jump. And then 1,000 people were egging him on to jump, and he couldn't back down. But as he prepared himself to jump in, he stripped his shirt off and his trousers. He could see jellyfish just about in the water below. So you don't want to bottle it, but at the same time, it's a dangerous thing to do. So he does it, and he landed in the jet and gets stung to ribbons. But he said the bit that people couldn't see is that Frank Lampard, I think it was, had come down to help him. So it must have been an England trip.
Must have been England, yeah.
Must have been an England trip. And the only way to soothe a jellyfish sting, as we know, is to pee on it. So imagine that footage had made the papers. Frank Lampard pissing on Peter Crouch to soothe these jellyfish.
It's quite a lot of. There's
a lot of ground to cover, isn't it?
To cover there, you know. I mean,
if you're wanting one of the racehorses in the team to take care of it, imagine Frank Lampard's the one.
That would take a while. But the thing about these trips, of course, is that, and what still makes me laugh is that. So Manchester United played Leeds, I think, in Stockholm at the weekend before they went on to Chicago. United, that is. And it was a 0-0 draw. Yeah. But the chatter around pre-season results, I don't know what you're like with Hibs, Gordon, but the football, or I don't know what you're like with Newcastle, Mark. They got hammered at Celtic at the weekend, didn't they? People read so much into these games, having witnessed so many of these games, I can absolutely tell everybody that they do not matter.
Villa.
They don't.
Villa have lost 2, haven't they? Walsall and Hansa Rostock.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I remember being, again, that Lou Van Gaal tour of America. I remember they played 4 games, they won them all. And I remember someone, another Manchester United reporter who happens to be a United fan, saying to me, "Oh, they are going to absolutely batter Swansea on the first game of the season. Lost 2-1 at home." And seriously, that is pre-season.
Yeah.
Forget the results, girls and boys. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Think about the fitness.
Mark, just very briefly before we finish on this one, did you have any official duties to take care of beyond the football? Did you have anything else to do?
Yeah, they did. We used to go and talk to the local associations and the refereeing, and the Premier League wanted to pass on, through their skills programs. We used to go and talk to the local referees from, for example, Hong Kong. So we didn't just have fun; you still had some duties to do during the day. But it wasn't like the players, for example. But you still had the training. You still wanted to keep fit, because at the end of the day, it's all about the first week of the season. It's not about pre-season. Pre-season is just a build-up, isn't it? And a chance to let your hair down. And I think, you talk about the results that we've just talked about. Nobody really cares about the results. It's A, not to get injured, and B, be ready for the first week, or the second week in August, whenever the season starts.
We've hardly talked about fitness, but when you were refereeing in the top flight, how fit were you, and what were the benchmarks? I always found that interesting. You had to be able to do a 10k in a certain amount of time, or an 800 metres. You had a time you had to break. So, how fit were you?
I was probably overweight when I first got on the Premier League. I was like 92 kilos. And when I see some photos back, I'm thinking, wow, how I could still run around and I still passed fitness tests, but I was nowhere near, the wake-up call was when Pierluigi Clina, decided that, wanted to change all the referees, the way they looked, the body comps, the stats. And he drove all the top referees to be as slim as possible. He wanted them to look like athletes. But that was the moment around 210, 211, where referees started to lose a lot of body fat, because referees were, not the notorious, the fittest, they just refereed. But the game changed so much. The pace of the game changed so much. And I remember stats. You can do anything with stats. I remember we had some stats, and I was doing an Arsenal game, for example. And in one game, my stats, my high speed was higher than Thierry Henry's. You can do anything with stats, because Thierry Henry's quicker than me. But my stats actually showed that I had a higher top speed than Thierry Henry.
Where were you going to?
Maybe he was injured.
He was on the bench.
Where were you going to? You're going to the buffet.
Yeah. But I lost a lot during, when I finished in 2017, I was 75, 76 kilos. My fitness levels were as good as the players. I remember commentators, saying it week in, week out that, my fitness levels were probably one of the best. I could read the game as well. And that's another thing. It's not just about, running. Referees, if you can read the game, like, for example, the fullback, when he's on his own, he's going to run with the ball. If a defender's going to, his opponent's going to block, close him down, he's going to put it in the middle. So what you do, you make your move before he actually kicks it. So when you start analysing things like that, I never used to just run around. I started, with a bit of experience, started knowing where the ball was going and where the ball wasn't going.
Can I ask you one question? You talk about fitness there and the way that referees look, and this may come across as a bit mean, and I hope it doesn't, but I'm going to say it anyway. When I look at referees, and I agree with you, by the way, most of them look in very, very good condition. And then you do look at someone like Simon Hooper, is it? And he just looks out of shape. I mean, he can't be, but he looks out of shape. And does that, how can I put this without digging the guy out? Does that affect kind of the image of refereeing when you see a referee who doesn't look in shape?
But that's the issue, isn't it? It's a hard one, because I've known Simon for years, and Simon is a fit guy. He passes the fitness test. Yeah. When we're training with him, you can see that, he's on par with probably 30-40% of the referees. And some people have just got that body shape. Yeah. And it's impossible to get out of that body shape. Yeah. And what you want, he's a good referee, he's a good man manager, he's fit. Just because he doesn't look the part shouldn't, I don't really want to have that argument.
No, absolutely.
But you're right. I remember referees, for example, they didn't want referees who were small, because, they wanted them to have that stature. They wanted them to be, strong or, authoritative. they wanted that policeman, that tall policeman. So he had authority.
You did mention, though, you were humbled in a Real Madrid game, though, eh? When it was Casillas had passed the ball out or thrown the ball out.
It was incredible. So he threw it. So it was a corner to Ajax, and he got the ball, he caught it, and he threw it. And within a split second, Ronaldo's got it going over the halfway line.
I think I've seen that. He did 100 metres or whatever it was. It
was an incredible goal. And I was quick. And I just waited. I think I got to the halfway line when the crowd went bananas for the goal. And I just said to myself, I may as well wait for the fucker to come back, because there's no way I'm going to keep running. It was just bonkers that quick. And sometimes the game's too quick for you.
I have to say one thing, and then we're going to move on to something else, but you just made me think, the talk there about referees being out in shape and out of shape, made me think of Luke Shaw, and it goes back to pre-season. I met again that United tour with Louis van Gaal. I remember Van Gaal humiliating Shaw. And another thing you get to see on these tours is you get to go to training sessions for the whole thing. I remember being at wherever the Washington Redskins play their NFL. It was their stadium, and we were there for the training session. And Van Gaal decided that Luke Shaw wasn't fit enough, and he made him train on his own in front of the media, knowing full well that we would notice that he was training on his own, and therefore ask him why he was training on his own, and therefore Van Gaal could say he's training on his own because he's 4 pounds overweight. And it was classic Van Gaal. Such a confident, didn't work out for him, such a confident guy. He was comfortable doing that. In the same training session, we stood there and watched him. Louis van Gaal, he was at the time probably in his early 60s, trying to tell Wayne Rooney, who was England captain at the time, how to take a penalty. The United players were just doing some penalty drills just to finish the session. Players were probably just doing it for a laugh. Probably hadn't even been told to do it. Just having a competition. Rooney was taking a penalty. Van Gaal walked up to him, had hold of Wayne Rooney, had hold of Wayne, and was like moving him like 30 degrees to the right, and then showing him with his instep how he should take this penalty. You can imagine the look on Wayne Rooney's face. And they wonder why it never worked out for Louis van Gaal at Manchester United.
We are going to move on, but just very quickly, because we are in pre-season, the rest of us, right? I've got a 15-year-old boy in the middle of his pre-season. What were the targets you had then? So what did you have? What numbers did you have to beat in an athletics field to qualify as a top-flight referee?
So what we used to do, very, very, when I first started, it used to be like a 6.5 laps, 6 3/4 laps in 12 minutes. That was the first FIFA, the test. And if you didn't pass it, you couldn't referee.
500.
So, 2004. Yeah, something like that.
So you're talking about, you'd normally do a 5K. A good athlete would be 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So half of that.
But it used to be funny because half the fitness tests, you would run it. And I'm thinking, God, I'm running a bit longer than I normally do. Yeah. And it was because the old fellas hadn't passed yet and they were waiting for them to pass. That 12 minutes is up. Just so
2.5K in 12 minutes.
Yeah, something like that it was. Yeah. But then we did the bleep test, and I think I was getting to level 21, I think, 21 or 22, which was still really, really, really good. And then they made different tests. They used to do like a 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 40 times. So they try and replicate something that you see in a game, but it's impossible. What you see in a game, like, for example, you referee Arsenal, it's completely different to refereeing Bolton, for example, when Bolton were in the Premier League, because Bolton used to play long. If you talk to Sam Allardyce, it was a long pass. Most people call it the long ball. And then you had Arsenal was ticky-tacky, which you didn't run around as much. It was all little sharp movements. So everything was always different.
Right, we're not even into the season yet, but we're going to have a conversation about VAR, right? And specifically VAR on corners and yellow cards. Now, big changes ahead, probably for the 2026 World Cup. So the lawmakers, the IFAB mob, are discussing whether VAR should intervene on corners and second yellow cards. That's normally been left to the referee's on-field judgment, if I'm right. But Mark, are you in favour of this, or are you against it as a former top?
If we talk about them law changes, I'm completely against it. I'm not saying that referees should have all this power before people give us all the abuse on social media to say, look, referees have got too much power. Are we now saying that the referee isn't the sole judge of a decision on the field of play anymore? Because we're clearly saying that they're not. What they're doing is they're starting the game and finishing the game, and everything else is left down to the VAR. Because if we're now seeing every throw-in and every corner is analysed, and I get why there's an argument for a corner kick, because if a corner kick gets swung in and there's a goal scored after an incorrect corner, then it's a big decision. And I remember Pierluigi Collina having a go at me once. Well, he didn't have a go at me. I'd give it. It was in the last 16, Poland, Switzerland in the Euro 16. And right in front of Anthony Taylor, a ball's gone. It looks like it's gone out of play before it's touched the defender. Anthony Taylor, who was no more than a few meters away, has give a corner. And the assistant shouts corner, and I've gone goal kick. And, the player shouts at us that I went passing, I'd got it wrong. And I said, okay, if I've got it wrong, so what? But at least I haven't given a corner, and the chances if they score off that corner, it would be big news because it would re-show that corner, they would re-show the goal. And I've given a goal kick. It was interesting the next day when I went back to the meeting, Collina had showed the incident and I was right. And Pierluigi Collina says, why did you go goal kick? And I said, because I had a massive doubt. I could see the ball had touched the player, but I didn't know he was off the field to play or not. I said, so I didn't want to give a corner. And if I'd got that wrong and something happened after that corner, Hughes would be shown that and it would be a major talking point. I said, so I've gone with the safe option of goal kick. Nobody talks about it. Nobody even discussed it. And he went that, and he said to Anthony Taylor, he said, that's why he was one of the top referees, because he analysed, he was thinking about the decisions, not the consequence of it. So I get the argument why corner kicks are important, but I believe now what we're now doing is, are we going to start the game even further by saying, look, guys, I need to check, is that a corner or not? It comes from Stockley Park or wherever the VR centre is. And then they say, yeah, you can carry on. Yeah, we can carry on.
Here's the thing, right, Mark? You used to be the man in charge, right? But do you think now it's refereeing by committee rather than having one person taking control of things?
I wouldn't say it'd be a committee. It's going to be controlled by the VAR, and the VAR will be the sole judge now of all of the decisions. All the referee's going to have the powers is to kick off and to finish the game. Probably in the future they'll have a timekeeper. So really the referee will be gone from the timekeeping.
Well, there you go. There's a big point, Mark. Do you think that there is no longer a role for an on-field referee if the technology advances as it is?
Probably not. He would just be there to relay the messages from the VR centre. The technology isn't. The VR technology. What we've got to remember, the technology is only, good, really good, when we're talking about factual decisions. If we're talking subjective decisions, it's a human being. Yeah. All the human being is doing is getting different angles. I'm not. You know what? I was hoping we wouldn't go down this route. I was hoping that we would leave certain things to the referees. And, I think second yellows could be looked at because it's a red card. I'm not comfortable that we can't look at second yellow cards, for example, because them second yellow cards have an impact. The first yellow card, unless it's clearly a wrong identity, for me, it's a judgment call of the referee. But what I prefer is I want the referee to go and have a look. I want the referee to have a look at his decision. And when I was in China, I used to go and have a look because I didn't understand the Chinese VARs. And I used to just say to the players, I'm going. And the players went, please do it because they feel better for it. And I would go across. And the feeling when you've seen the decision yourself was so much better as a referee because I would say to the players, look, I've seen it. I'm happy. The players would give us less dissent. And you know what? I could move on from it. One of the worst things that used to happen to me was you give a decision, you don't know if you're right or wrong, and it's playing about in your head. I wanted to clear it. And I think referees would prefer to clear it themselves than have somebody else making that call.
Problem is though, Mark, does it not slow the game down so badly? And we talked about this with the Ballers League, right? If you're keeping young fans interested in the game, and suddenly now VAR's looking at second yellows and it's looking at corners, you're sitting, it's not a 90-minute game, is it? You're looking at a lot. And by the way, that's fine if you're sitting in Miami and in Fort Lauderdale, but if you're sitting at Ayr United on a Tuesday night and it's freezing cold and you've got a 7-year-old with you, that's not going to encourage young people to get into football, is it?
No, and that's what it's about. It's about engaging the younger people. And, the Premier League, for me, the Premier League was one of the fastest leagues in the world. And what we're going to do is slow it down even more by, making, more calls. And there'll be an argument saying, are we now turning football into, to be perfect? Well, no, it's not perfect. Players aren't perfect. Coaches aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Referees don't make decisions and want wrong decisions. They want everything to be right. They want everything to be accepted. They want to have an easy life. But what we're now doing is we're now saying, let's stop the game. 5 minutes in, let's check this corner. Oh, we can't really decide what we're going to do after 10 seconds, 20 seconds. We've had another break.
If I could interject, Mark, I think what we're missing here is a very simple point, which is that all we need is common sense. Okay? So we've got the technology. I never wanted the technology, but the technology is here. So we've got the technology and we use it. Okay? Sometimes to our benefit and sometimes not. But common sense is at the core of so much of this, and this is at the heart of this debate. So I remember last season, and I talked about it on the podcast I used to do with Chris Sutton. There was a game at Arsenal. Henry, our producer, will get upset about this, but he'll probably remember there was a game at Arsenal. It might have been against Brighton. Arsenal were given a corner. It was a clear goal kick. It was clear as day. They were given a corner from which they scored. And it was a really important goal. It might have been an equalising goal or a goal to give them the lead. Now, it was so obvious that I didn't understand why, in the time it took for Arsenal players to get the ball to the corner flag, line up, centre halves to come trotting forward, bit of jostling, in that 30 seconds, why the referee just didn't get a word in his ear from the VAR officials saying, look, sorry mate, but you've really got that one wrong. It's a goal kick. And the referee goes, okay, it's a clear one. No need to look at a monitor. No need to have a big discussion about it. He's just made a mistake. Goal kick, get on with it. That is a way that VAR could be used. What we don't want...
Improves the game. That improves the game,
right? It improves the game. It doesn't slow the game, and it improves the fairness for everybody. Yeah. What we don't want is endless discussions and video replays of is it a corner? Is it a goal kick? If you've got to look at it more than once, just go with what the referee's given in the first point.
How many of those incidents happen though, where like two players clatter into each other and you just can't tell?
So if you've got to look at it more than twice, just stick with what the referee's done and move on. So it can, but it's like everything with IFAB. The International Football Association Board, to give them their boring title, who are in charge of the laws of the game. When they choose to meddle, they meddle in the wrong areas. Instead of looking at things that are important, like we talked about before, like ludicrous interpretation of handball and time wasting and things like that, they fanny about around the edges with things like this that don't serve anybody. They don't serve any purpose, but they seem to feel that every summer they've got to introduce something new to be seen to doing their job.
I totally agree with you, Ian. The problem we have got, right? The set of some protocols, rules, basically, at the start of this VAR project, and they wanted every country who used it to use the same protocols. They didn't want, for example, America, the MLS, to have different criteria than they did in England. I get that argument. The problem is, there's nothing in the protocols that allow them, for example, and I knew it happened because I've been, listening to communications where the VAR, who was clever, is a team player with his referee, because that referee works with him on Champions League. He would quickly say it down immediately. It's a corner. So the referee could quickly change it. What we don't want is the 20 seconds or 30 seconds. No. Years ago, if I got a corner wrong without the use of VAR, you used to smell it. The players used to say, Mark, you've got that one wrong. Sheepishly, the attacking team would laugh at you, and you would be like, okay, then no problem. Ball comes in and I find a foul. Because what I wanted to do was, people say, wait, that's wrong. Two wrongs don't make a right. But the players accepted it. What the players didn't want to see was a goal. The other team didn't complain because they knew they got an incorrect corner. But now, if you want purist, then the VAR and the referee should work together. And the problem also you've got, Ian, in my opinion, is that the referees now and the assistant referees now aren't making decisions. They're relying on the VAR to make the decisions. If they made them...
It shouldn't be difficult.
If they made them...
It shouldn't be difficult to use, because we've had VAR with us now for 4 or 5 years, however long it is. Use the technology where it clearly helps us. Yeah. And in areas where it clearly isn't serving us, slowing the game down, muddling the game even more, don't use it. We've got to look for that nirvana. We've got to look for that nirvana, that state of accepted being. Because at the moment we're in a mess. We're in a mess with VAR. And we're in a mess with VAR not because the technology is not efficient. It's because we're not using it properly. Mm-hmm. And that's where we need to work towards. And that needs to involve referees, current and past players, current and past managers. That's how we need to do this. Round a table, on training fields, work out, how does this serve us, where does it not serve us, and move forward. It shouldn't be that difficult.
And hold that thought for a second, because I left newspapers about 9 years ago, And you know what the economics are like in that game. Things have to change. And we were set a challenge as a group of people in a senior leadership position to consider how the future of it would look. You know, be really radical, really challenged.
How did that go for you?
And I left, right? Because I could see the writing on the wall. But here's the thing, and I think Mark just touched on it. Can you, in your career as a football writer, see the day where you're watching a game of football without an on-field referee? And the second part of it is, should you be thinking radically about improving football by considering ideas like that?
No. I can't imagine that will ever happen. I know it's not the way forward, because if you take it's the human element of sport that makes it what it is. Okay, it's not a computer game. It's a game. Whatever sport you're talking about, it's a game between human beings, and it encompasses all the good things about human beings and the not so good things about human beings, and the frailties of human beings, and the way that human beings can do well one day and dreadfully the next.
That's romantic.
It's not romantic, Gordon. That's what sport is.
I'm playing devil's advocate,
it's not romantic.
It's a business, though, isn't it? It's a business, and
no, it's not.
But if decisions, listen.
Remember,
I am playing devil's advocate.
You're talking as though that the Premier League and the Champions League are the only things that exist, and they're not. And you should know about that. You sitting there in your football
West
shirt
Essex
from which league? From the Ryman's League back in the day.
Yeah.
You should know more than anyone that it's not just about that. That's the tip of our game. The things that we talk about are about football all the way down from the pyramid all the way to the grassroots. It's about people.
And listen, I'm playing devil's advocate, but the point I'm making is, if you've got betting, and betting is, whether you like it or not, a massive part of football, accuracy is really important. We're
not beholden to betting companies, Gordon. That's not why we play football.
No, but I'm making the point, though, that if you want perfection, are we seeking perfection in football in an imperfect game?
Yes, and we're wrong to.
Right.
Because, and this is why this was at the heart of my original objection to VAR, which is, to me, I'm repeating myself, sport is about human frailty. Okay, it's about the human being. It's about the human mind, the human body. We all get things right. We all get things wrong, and that includes the officials. Okay, and that is why we should have left it alone. Because at the end of the day, people get things wrong, and that's the beauty of sport. The unpredictability of sport is its beauty. We've tried to turn it into an exercise in science, and it hasn't worked. Well, we've still got the imperfection. It just takes twice as long to get to the end of the road.
Just for the record, I would like to see all football played with a 4-4-2 with no technology whatsoever. Right?
No, but you see, I enjoyed the FA Cup matches last year because they didn't have the technology early in the competition, and there were like games of football where you were allowed to challenge. There was mistakes, and
actually, on that point, there's a really specific issue, right, Mark? And this is one that I think might test what you've just said. Decisions around penalties, right? So is the ball dead after a spot kick is saved? After a penalty is saved, should the ball be dead?
Is that a new recommendation?
New recommendation.
Recommendation, yeah.
So no one can score from a rebound, right? Now, to me, that sounds like utter bollocks, because it's a free kick. Once the ball's live, game plays on. But you disagree, Mark, no?
It's been a discussion for a while. And I know who's behind this discussion. It's David Beckham, who's one of the directors of IFAB now. He used to be the head of the refereeing in the Football Association in England. Yeah. And David Beckham's argument for many, many years when I was in his company was he believed that the penalty kick should be, once you've had the penalty kick, you've had the advantage of the penalty kick, therefore you lose the right to have a rebound. What I can see from it, the benefits I can see from it, is that we see so much encroachment. We see so much time wasting in the taking of a penalty kick because of the encroachment on the edge of the penalty area, which the referee goes to the players start arguing with them, and therefore the delay gets longer and longer. So if you don't have the edge of the penalty area, the edge of the players not fighting to get inside the penalty area because they don't need to, because the ball is going to stop, and the goalkeeper can, the only decision that the match officials have got is the goalkeeper off the line or not, then everything else is now finished. And I think it would make the refereeing life easier. And I think it also says to the player, the attacking player, you've got one chance. Why should you have a second chance when you've got a chance from 12,
two things here.
9.15 meters? You've got that chance to score. I don't believe you should have that second chance. And to have that, then you're starting to work out now, is the player having a rebound? Is he encroachment? All of this would be taken away.
Two things there. we should not be meddling with the rules of the game just to make life easier for the referees and just because the players won't behave.
Why not? Why not? Why not, Ian? Why not? Because if you're making rules that are difficult, like you've talked about handball, for example, you've just said about handball, the meddling so many times with handball because referees have huge problems with the criticism around handball. So they try and tweak the laws and tweak the rules to make refereeing and the game better and the refereeing to be made easier. So referees need to have simplified decisions that everybody accepts and everybody understands. And if they make the rules better and more easier for the referees and they've got less decisions to make, surely it's a benefit.
But they're changing, they're proposing a fundamental, as Gordon described it so eloquently as bollocks, they're changing the fundamental aspects of the game, which is they are asking, and forgive me if I'm wrong, that would be the only part of a football match where a live ball would be declared dead. And why? So that's a fundamental change. As Gordon says, a penalty is just
a fundamental change for a while. It's just the back pass. The back pass to the goalkeeper, the throwing back to the goalkeeper. There's been many changes over the years.
Fair point. But not for the reason of just to make it easier for referees.
I agree with you a lot. I just think sometimes, like, for example, the game changes so much. We talked about the goalkeeper, the pass back to the goalkeeper. Everybody went, no, we're not having that. Then all of a sudden it was introduced and it made the game better because it was more attacking. We're now, you remember the goal kicks? We only had this 2 seasons ago and it's changed the fundamental of football. Now the goal kick, they're allowed to play. Yeah. Nobody can be outside the penalty area. The ball doesn't have to go outside the penalty area on a goal kick. That was a fundamental change to the game. And now you're seeing teams playing out from the back and giving the ball away, and there's more.
I would say that's a largely incidental change to the laws of the game. Whereas declaring a live ball dead is, as far as from what I can see, unprecedented.
Can I just point out that surely that's the entertainment value, is that beautiful jeopardy of, if the keeper saves this, there's a race. There's another element of a penalty, which is that race.
100%.
I love, and surely, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong here, 100%. You both know, is the design of a football pitch not set up around a penalty, around the outside of an 18-yard box? Is that no? Yeah, so you might as well remove that semicircle then, eh? Because then you're changing
also, let's be right about it. If we had this rule, the Lionesses wouldn't be in the final of the European Championships because they scored from a penalty rebound just as we sit here today, just about 12 hours ago.
Then they should have went to a penalty shootout and tried again.
Yeah, we know that would have gone.
What you need is Louis van Gaal to come in and show them how to take them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just be clear on this to finish, Mark. Right? So you think, and this is a mad moment, you agree with David Ellery on something, first of all.
Yeah, first and foremost, yeah.
Yeah, but so you genuinely think after the penalty's taken, keeper saves it, what, you blow up, and that's what, a by kick?
I'm a firm believer of this. And people will say, yeah, you'll always have your critics. And I think there's too much we discuss. Is the player inside the penalty area or not? You know what? I watched the replay of the penalty England scored last night in the Euro against Italy. And they kept showing, was the girl that was close to Chloe Kelly that scored it? Kelly, was she close to her? Because they didn't know who had scored the goal at first. They were showing, was she encroachment or not? And it was like, there was replays after replays looking if somebody was encroaching. You wouldn't have that encroachment. You wouldn't have the pushing and shoving. You would also have the penalty taken quicker, which is another benefit, because I think there's a lot of time wasting by players deliberately if you're on the defending team because you want to delay the kick.
I hate that.
About.
I hate that.
You would solve
I really hate
another issue you're going to solve, which is making referees' life easier, that they don't have to solve this pushing and shoving. The only thing that you're going to have is the ball over the line, which the assistant can have, the ball over the line and the goalkeeper encroachment. They're the only 2 decisions you've got. There's too many other decisions.
What happens if the keeper pams the ball around the post and it goes out? Is it still just a by kick? Or is it
would be a goal kick? A goal kick. But also the other thing it would stop is the yellow card on a player stopping. You know the feign the shots?
Yeah.
That, and the stop and then the way to take, and that would be,
I don't like
that. Once you've done that, for me, that should be, you've lost your right of a penalty kick. Everything else, bang, done. Reverse the decision, it became an indirect free kick.
I hate the shithousery that goes on around penalties. I hate what goalkeepers do, the Emi Martinez World Cup final thing. I can't stand that scuffing of the penalty spot. I hate all that. It's juvenile, pathetic behaviour that I'm not going to say referees should get on top of it, but they should get on top of it. I hate that. All the argy-bargy on the edge of the box, I don't really care, really. And I just think, at the end of the day, it's a free kick and the ball remains live until it leaves the field of play. It's a fundamental of football.
Yeah, I like again, the whole momentum of a football game. If the keeper palms it around the corner, there's a moment of celebration with the keeper, and then there's a corner. So, there's still there's still an excitement there.
I agree.
I don't know, and again, I think having players jostling and that, football's not a contact sport anymore. I want to see a little bit of, Virgil van Dijk wrestling Jamie Vardy to the ground by the head, because that gives you something to enjoy, a little bit of, excitement on the pitch. And I think we're trying to find perfection in an imperfect game.
I think we are.
Right, there's another one for you here, Mark. It's an interesting point by Alex Brown, and we'll talk about it more, because I've got to explain why I'm wearing this. But, there's a question mark. We'll talk about it in more detail next week. But grassroots football's kicking off as well, and I just wanted to give a shout to West Essex, Dan Redding and Turks, my mate, who's about to...
So for those who are not watching on YouTube,
Yes.
Gordon is wearing a beautiful non-league football shirt that I can only describe as a little bit Germany Euro 96 or
I think it was West Germany in 1990. Isn't
okay,
it?
yeah,
This was Bremer,
yeah.
Voller, Klinsmann era.
The Klinsmann, Bremer, Mateus era. Beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, actually, I have to say.
Right, boys, I think that's us for this week. Nothing else to cover. And would you like to mention your party hat before we go? Have you missed it?
I'm going to wear a party hat next week.
Right.
I could see it. What did I say? I saw it straight away, didn't I?
You called it, yeah. No, you called it. Although you at the moment, you might look like you're in one of those hospital cubicles
I am.
at the moment.
I'm in my studio ready to go and get into makeup, ready for, was it 1:30? Well,
you're
filming the very
Gladiator.
first show, yeah.
Right, boys, great to catch up. We'll be back on Tuesday for the next instalment. Until then, follow us on all of our socials. You can see a little picture of Ian there with his party hat on X, Blowers Pod, TikTok, Whistleblowers Podcast, Instagram at Whistleblowers Pod, and email us as well, whistleblowers@dailymail.com. Right, one thing left to do, and that falls to our referee. Mark, can you blow the full-time whistle, please? Oh no, he's got it.
So now I've got my whistle back.
If you want to watch more episodes of Whistleblowers, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll keep you up to date all the way through the summer with everything that's happening in the world of football.